I'm Dom Hawthorne, and in this video I'm going to be talking a bit about why I switched from the Line 6 Helix to the Neural DSP Quad Cortex. So I had been a really long time Helix user. I actually got the Helix the day that it was released. I got it from PMT Birmingham, and I used it for I think 7 or 8 years it would have been, and I've always rated it really highly. At the time that I got the Helix, I'd already tried out the Kemper and the Axe-Fx, but the Helix just really stood out to me, and was just the better option for my preferences. I really liked how intuitive the interface was. The little things like the scribble strips and the capacitive foot switches, and the fact that it was like a all-in-one kind of floorboard unit ready to go. You just take that and that's got everything you need. That's what really drew me to the Helix. And then like sound and feel wise, all three units, the Kemper, the Axe-Fx and the Helix, I couldn't really tell much of a difference between all three in terms of like the tone and the feel. I would say how I thought of it was that all three sounded fantastic. They were just slightly different. I couldn't really put one above the other in terms of like the quality of the sound or how realistic either one felt in terms of like that kind of tube amp feel. So yeah, the Helix was the one that I went with anyway. And then even right up until I made the switch to the Quad Cortex, I was still super happy with the Helix. Like the reason I switched wasn't because there was anything wrong with the Helix or that the Helix wasn't performing as well as I needed it to. I would even still now would happily gig and record with a Helix. So obviously the question is like, why did I make the switch if I was so happy with the Helix? Well, the main thing that kind of caught my attention with the Quad Cortex was the capture feature, which I think was probably the case with a lot of people who use the Quad Cortex. I loved the idea that I could capture the sound of my actual amps. So, like I say, the Helix has loads of fantastic sounding amp models, but the idea that I could actually capture the sound of my actual amp was really enticing. And then obviously you might be thinking, well, the Kemper can do that. Obviously the difference was that this was in like a floorboard model similar to the Helix. It was like similar kind of setup. So yeah, straight off the bat, that really caught my attention with the Quad Cortex. And then the second thing kind of links into what I've just said there about the Quad Cortex being in that kind of pedal board format. And the fact that it was, I think it's almost a third of the size. That might be wrong, but it's definitely like somewhere between a half and a third of the size of the Helix. So at the time, I'd actually been considering buying a HX Stomp or a Stomp XL to use as like a more portable rig. So like for gigs where I didn't need like everything that the full Helix had to offer, I could just put the Stomp in my gig bag, take one case, just the guitar, Stomp, all in the same case, and easy load in, easy load out. But what put me off from doing that was obviously the Stomp has like half of the processing power of the full Helix, so I was kind of always a bit like, is it worth doing it? It's one extra bag for me to take or one extra case for me to take if I take the full Helix. So I was always kind of on the fence. So then when I saw that obviously the Quad Cortex being so much smaller than the full Helix, but also having potentially more processing power. That again was something that really kind of piqued my interest. So obviously I watched a ton of YouTube videos, watched loads of demos and reviews of the Quad Cortex, and I could see that a lot of the kind of like big time pro players were using the Quad Cortex. A couple in particular was like Rabia, Pete Thorne. They were both using the Quad Cortex as like a touring rig, so they'd captured all of their actual amps onto that. Rabia did a video, I think it was showing his captures of the Victory Kraken amps that he used to play with Stormzy at Glastonbury, I think that was the video. I saw that one. Pete Thorne also did like a rig rundown of how he had his setup. And then there was Phil Short as well. I'd seen a few posts on Instagram, I think it was, of his Quad Cortex setup as well. And then the final kind of straw was my good friend Lewis Spencer, who is a fantastic guitarist. I'll put a link to his like Instagram and stuff in the description, because he's a brilliant player, so I'd recommend checking him out. But he actually bought a Quad Cortex not long before I did, and when he got his, he sent me some videos of him capturing his analog gear, and we were both like blown away by how accurate the captures were, like compared to the real thing. He sent me one video, I think it was of his the Andy Timmons overdrive, where he's A-B in between the capture and the actual pedal, and it was like there was no difference. So yeah, after seeing that, I was like, that was it. Like I was sold. So going into the purchase of the Quad Cortex, if I'm honest, I wasn't really expecting much of a difference in terms of like the sound and the feel, compared to the Helix. Obviously, I'd been using the Helix for a really long time, and like I didn't really think, there was much room for improvement. So I was really just expecting like the same kind of thing as what the Helix does, just smaller and with a few extra features like the captures and a few other bits and pieces. But I've got to say, in fact, I did a video, another video, which was how the Quad Cortex sounds straight out of the box. And the reason I did that video was because the first time that I plugged into the Quad Cortex and played through, it's the first preset that comes on. It's a JCM 800 amp model. I was blown away by the sound and also how organic it felt to play through. And like I said, I honestly didn't think that it could get much better compared to the Helix, but yeah, I was really stunned at how just how it sounded and how it felt to play through. Considering I didn't think there was much room for improvement, it was like a step above the Helix. I was aware that obviously it's that kind of honeymoon phase of getting a new shiny piece of equipment. So I made sure I was going to give it a few weeks before I kind of made up my mind for certain. But even then, after a few weeks of using the Quad Cortex, it continued to impress me, and even more so once I started capturing my own equipment, and I captured my Victory V140 and that kind of thing, and it was just super impressive. So at this point now, having used the Quad Cortex for a few months, I'd say my current opinion is that the Quad Cortex is kind of, well, yeah, like I say, just like a step above the Helix. Definitely in terms of like sound, and like that tube amp kind of feel. It's just yeah, it's just like a level up kind of thing. And then when you know pair that with the user interface is brilliant. It's easy to use. It's easy to set up. You know, everything on it is pretty straightforward and simple to use. You know, the size of the unit, it's brilliant. It's, you know, it's small enough that if you're traveling light, you can just take your guitar and fit that in the front pocket of your gig bag or your case or whatever. Or, you know, it's small enough that you can put it on a pedal board with an expression pedal and maybe one or two extra pedals, and still have like a compact pedal board. Whereas again, like with the Helix, because of how big it is, if you was to put that on a pedal board, you know, you end up needing a big pedal board to fit anything else on as well. So yeah, it's just kind of like like I say, a step above the Helix. And it just definitely suits my preferences, that little bit more. That's not to say that the Quad Cortex is better than the Helix in every way. There's definitely a couple of areas that, you know, the Helix does kind of take the extra point. One being the effects models. So the Helix has like a really wide range of effects when it comes to delays, reverbs, modulation, pitch effects. It's got tons, and they're all really good quality as well. So the you know, where the Helix has got the quantity and the quality, whereas the Quad Cortex has the quality but not so much the quantity when it comes to those effects. The Quad Cortex covers, like, you know, your staple stuff. It has the fundamentals, but it just hasn't got as much of, like, you know, the more exotic effects, that the Helix has a lot of. Obviously, this could change with future updates. You know, Neural could easily add more, you know, kind of varied effects of those types in future updates. So, you know, that's something to bear in mind. And then another thing that I do actually miss from the Helix is the desktop editor. So you can plug the Helix into your computer or your laptop and edit your presets on the computer, like with the desktop like app, which the Quad Cortex doesn't have at the moment, and this is quite a contentious point for some Quad Cortex users, because Neural have said that they are working on a desktop app, but they have been working on it for quite a long time, and you know, some users are getting a bit impatient waiting for that to come out. But yeah, I did find the desktop editor on the Helix was really useful, especially when recording, because you know, I would have the Helix set up, and then you could have the desktop editor on part of the screen or on one screen, and then your recording software on another screen. And rather than having to go back and forth between, you know, your computer and the unit itself, you know, you can just do it all from one, you know, one screen kind of thing. Which, yeah, I do kind of miss that feature. But again, you know, hopefully this is something Neural will address in a future update. They've only just released, obviously, firmware 2.0, which has added some pretty cool features. So maybe the desktop editor will come in a future update, hopefully quite soon. So yeah, I think in conclusion, is really, like I say, the Quad Cortex is just like a step above the Helix. You know, for what I need it for, and for what I use it for, it is like, it's just like that next level up from what the Helix was. And the thing is as well, it's only going to get better. Like, as Neural release more firmware updates for it, it's, you know, it's only going to go from strength to strength. And it's worth bearing in mind as well that the Helix has had 7 or 8 years of firmware updates to get it to the point that it's at now. And when you think that in my opinion, the Quad Cortex is already like that step above what the Helix is now. To think that further down the line, once we've had a few more updates, it's going to be even better. I think that's quite an exciting thought. I'd say that maybe if effects are like a big part of your sound, and something that you use a lot of, then maybe the Helix is more the route to go, just because it has like such a wider range of effects when it comes to like delays, reverbs, modulation, pitch effects, and like like synth kind of sounding stuff. It definitely does have more options than the Quad Cortex. So if that kind of stuff is important to you, then maybe at this moment in time the Helix is the way to go. But yeah, I mean, other than that, then the Quad Cortex is firmly at the top for me. And to be honest, like since switching over, I've never really looked back since switching to the Quad Cortex. But yeah, that's about it for this video, really, I think. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video and hope you found it useful. If you have, feel free to like and subscribe. Check out some of my other videos. Got a few other Quad Cortex videos uploaded, and there'll be some more to come as well in the future, so keep an eye out for those. But yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully see you next time.